Ladies and gentlemen, this is to announce that this will be the first boarding call for southbound train number 19, Amtrak's world-famous Crescent. All aboard!
It's a place where journeys begin and end.
We're here at the Atlanta's Peachtree station. This station was officially opened on March the 17th, 1918. And so this year we are actually celebrating the 100th year anniversary.
Before you even go inside, the building's facade tells you you're about to step back in time.
It's a tangible link back to our past. It gives you an idea of what travel was 100 years ago.
I would say that this building metaphorically integrates Atlanta's past with Atlanta's present.
It was originally designed for the Southern Railway by Atlanta architect Neil Reed. And with a prominent place on Peachtree Street, the station was built to fit in with other upscale addresses of the day. From its Palladian windows to its classic wooden benches, the station represents a period in history when things were built to last and people traveled by train.
In 1924, there were 7 trains northbound, 7 trains southbound. 1930, it actually picked up an extra train. It was actually 8.
No doubt this was a busy place at the beginning of the 20th century, and this wasn't even Atlanta's main train station.
This was a suburban station. It was primarily passenger-wise for the northern suburbs of Atlanta. Of course, at that time, the city was much smaller.
You had this station, you had the large terminal station in downtown Atlanta, and adjacent to that was the Union Station.
But in the early 70s, both those buildings were closed and demolished as America's interstates and airlines began to change how people traveled.
At that time, there was no champion crusader to try to save one of those stations. The stations were closed, and of course that's typical of Atlanta. We tend to tear stuff down and either put a parking lot or build a new building there.
These days, Peachtree Station is the only place people can catch a train in Atlanta. Amtrak's Crescent stops here on its route between New York City and New Orleans. But sadly, the number of people using the station has been dropping. According to the Rail Passengers Association, the station only saw around 76,000 arrivals and departures in 2017. It saw more than 111,000 in 2011.
I speak to many people, and they don't realize that Atlanta is not only served by a train, Amtrak's Crescent, but that we indeed have a train station.
And all you have to do is look outside to see one of the station's main competitors.
It is interesting, the station has wound up being right next door to the interstate. The private automobile did so much to kill the intercity passenger trains, yet today we are right next door.
But there's still something special about riding the rails and starting your trip from an historic passenger station.
There is the romance of the rails, and for those of us that are railroad romanicists or rail buffs, if you want to call us that, it's just a wonderful journey getting on board the train.
Today that's what it is. It's more about the journey itself, seeing the sights and meeting the people along the way.
Hopefully the journey for this 100-year-old building is far from over. In 1976, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And as Atlanta's population continues to skyrocket and the roads become more congested, maybe there will be a new role for this old station in the city's future.
You see, railroads built this country. When one looks at the history of Atlanta, one has to consider the fact that this was and is the railroad capital of the Southeast. You cannot talk about Atlanta's history without talking about the railroads.